here to have an afternoon chat. Almost didn't make it, but it looks like it's going to happen. We are on here. We are live. We're here to have our conversation. So glad you're here. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notifications bell. So if I do another one of these surprise lives, you get the notification so you can hop on. The more people here, the more fun we have. So be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notifications bell. Be sure to post this on Reddit. Be sure to post this on Facebook. Be sure to post this on Twitter. Be sure to post this on BunkerChan. Be sure to post this everywhere videos are posted. The more people here, the more fun that we can have. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. So glad that you're here. So glad we're having our conversation. It's going to be great. It's going to be absolutely great. I've got a lot of things, not actually a lot of things to say. I've got a few things to say this afternoon. We'll open with my opening remarks as usual. And then after that, we will jump into names and locations, roll call. We'll get a sense of who is watching. And then we'll do the super chats. We already got one super chat. Why has communism become a blanket smear for all bad things? All right. Communism. Blanket smear. All righty. All right. So welcome, folks. Glad you're here. Folks, I just wanted to say I am so happy to see that Jimmy Dore has won the argument. If you haven't noticed, I'll give you a quick update. So Jimmy Dore said that with the pandemic happening and with the need for health care being absolutely necessary, Trump martial law reports. With the need for health care becoming very, very clear, Jimmy Dore suggested that Nancy Pelosi should be pressed by AOC and by the squad in the U.S. Congress, U.S. House of Representatives, to bring Medicare for all to a vote, to make people vote up or down on Medicare for all. Use the opportunity. Let the moment not go to waste. Strike while the iron is hot. And say, hey, Nancy Pelosi, before we vote for you again as Speaker of the House, you need to agree to bring Medicare for all to a vote. So Jimmy Dore said this and just said, hey, let's make it happen. Now is the time. Demand that Nancy Pelosi actually put Medicare for all to a vote on the House floor. Then immediately, all kinds of mainstream voices just jumped on Jimmy Dore. It was like, how dare Jimmy Dore suggest such a thing? There were articles in like the New Yorker about this. All kinds of mainstream liberal MSNBC, MSDNC voices jumped on Jimmy Dore. The Young Turks jumped on Jimmy Dore. Everybody was jumping on top of Jimmy Dore. Jacobin lined up against Jimmy Dore. Everybody came down on Jimmy Dore. How dare he suggest that they put Medicare for all to a vote? It was, I have never seen anything like it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I got onto Twitter on Sunday. On Sunday, I got onto Twitter. And I saw the trending terms, and I saw Jimmy Dore. And I thought, well, I watch Jimmy Dore, so maybe it's trending for me. No, it was not just trending for me. It was trending for all of Twitter. Jimmy Dore was trending, and everyone in the world was jumping on top of Jimmy Dore. How dare Jimmy Dore call for this? Oh, this is unacceptable. It's rotten. Jimmy Dore, he once got money from a group of Syrian Americans who don't want the USA to fund terrorism in their country, and he's a bad, bad dude. How dare Jimmy Dore do this? He is awful. He's horrible. He's a bad man. Jimmy Dore should be deplatformed. Jimmy Dore, oh my goodness, how dare he do such a thing? And then, folks will recall that Jimmy Dore defended himself. And he said, look, if we are really gonna, be fighting for America's working families, we need to demand Medicare for all. And he would not back down, and they tried to lie. and say that, oh, Nancy Pelosi couldn't do it, and they tried to lie and say that, oh, blah, 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 and he just wouldn't let it go, and he wouldn't back down, and they got ugly. Those folks got ugly. The Young Turks got ugly. The Jacobin, folks, they got ugly, and anyway, long story short, they took a poll among Young Turks viewers, and it appears that the majority of the Young Turks viewers agreed with Jimmy Dore. Meanwhile, among progressive Americans, while they were being told by all the phonies and fakers that Jimmy Dore was a bad person, while they were being told that, most progressive-minded left-wing Americans agreed with Jimmy Dore. Right? No matter what Jabba the Vosh said, no matter what Skippy the Bear said, they all agreed with Jimmy Dore. All right, super chat here. Alternative. Men in discarded social democracy should advocates of a plain economy. All right. New term. So Lenin discarded. So, all these supporters, all these people on the internet thought that Jimmy Dore was right. All over the internet, people thought Jimmy Dore was right. And it backfired. They had planned to pull a page from the Puritan culture of the United States, right? Nowadays, with social media, right, there's a whole lot of cyberbullying and doxing and all of that. And I noticed that prior to Jimmy Dore, it was like every day I saw the name of somebody in the Trump administration or the name of some celebrity who'd done something wrong trending. And it was like the plan was that Jimmy Dore had committed the sin of questioning the so-called leaders of the progressive movement. And so he was sentenced to be put in the stocks, in the pillory. And all of the leftists and liberals were to be mobilized to throw fruit upon Jimmy Dore for his horrendous sin of actually wanting, a delivery of the promises that AOC and the Squad and Bernie Sanders and others had made. And Jimmy Dore was to be put into the pillory. And all of us, we were supposed to be, throwing fruit and rotten fruits and saying, shame upon you, Jimmy Dore. How dare you? How dare you? Super chats. 600 disgrace. 600 disgrace, and antiwar.com, and so based on that, Jimmy Dore was supposed to, just be destroyed. Russia. Supposed to be destroyed. Just destroyed. I mean, he was just supposed to be finished. But it backfired. Jimmy Dore got about 100,000 more subscribers, right? His channel blew up, and the audiences of the Young Turks, and the audiences of Jacobin, and the audiences of Skippy the Bear, and the audiences of Jabba the Vosh, all basically thought higher of Jimmy Dore. And so, suddenly, these voices who had been sent out to nail Jimmy Dore to the wall, to pillory Jimmy Dore and throw fruit at him, to put him in the public shaming stocks, all of them started backing up and saying, there's too much left-wing infighting. Why is Jimmy Dore trying to cause left-wing infighting? There's too much left-wing infighting. The same people that have been saying that, if you dare support, the Syrian government and not want terrorism in Syria, that you are then a Nazbol crypto red-brown. The same people that have, tried to silence and isolate the anti-war left, they started saying, there's too much left-wing infighting. Can't we all just get along? Can't we all just get along? The Jacobin crowd that run a hit piece on anybody who actually gets anything done, whether it be Tulsi Gabbard or the workers of India or anybody, they all started, let's all just get along. The progressive movement, we all just got to get along. We ought to get along. Like, they had been mobilized to attack Jimmy Dore. They started attacking him. It did not work. And so then all of a sudden they started, truce, guys, truce. Okay, we're losing the game now. Truce. All right, let's and they're panicking, and they're still doing it, right? They tried to take down Jimmy Dore. They tried to set the stage for Jimmy Dore to get banned from YouTube or banned from Twitter or whatever. They tried to mobilize popular support for Jimmy Dore's deplatforming, and they got the opposite results. Max. O-A-N. All right. They got the opposite results. And as a result, Jimmy Dore is stronger than ever, and the synthetic left are in retreat. And that has put a smile on my face. I am very happy to have seen that, right? I am very happy because, Jimmy picked the hill he wanted to die on, right? He said, okay, this is something that it's pretty obvious. You got to fight for health care. If you want health care, you got to fight for it. If you want national health care, you got to fight for it. So Jimmy, he planted his flag on the hill and said, come get me. Come get me. This is the hill that I will die on. This will be my last stand. Come get me, fake leftists. Come and tear me down. And they came for him. The floodwaters were rising. The enemy was marching in. The bombardment began. The mortar shells were flying. And Jimmy Dore stood strong and flexed his muscles. And Jimmy Dore is still standing. And the synthetic left is backtracking. And I have a big smile on my face. I'm delighted to have seen it. It is amazing. It is an amazing development. Well played, Jimmy Dore. You have come out of the battle victorious. You changed the conversation. You put them on the defensive. And now AOC and the squad and all the people who say they're for Medicare for all but don't do anything about it are on the defensive. They're now trying to please everyone who listened to you, Jimmy Dore. My hat goes off to you. Tip of the hat. Great work, Jimmy Dore. I think that was very, very, very well played. So there you go. Hashtag force the vote. Marching forward. This was a victory for the progressive movement over fake leftism, over the Twitter mobs, over the Silicon Valley fascists, and their plans to silence anti-imperialist voices. This was a great step forward. We should all be optimistic and happy about that heading into the holiday season. Now, folks, holidays are upon us. Soon it will be Christmas, December 25th. Hanukkah has come already. Kwanzaa, I believe, has already started. New Year's will be approaching for those who celebrate the Orthodox Christmas. It's coming up. A lot of good things are happening. It is holiday season. And on that note, I wanted to say something that I often point out this time of year that I think is amusing, and it's worth discussing, is that the American Christmas traditions, in a lot of ways, are pre-Christian. Now, does that mean they're bad? No. Let's talk about the origins of a lot of things that are considered to be American Christian tradition. Let's just talk about it, right? So, what do we do at Christmas time? Well, we dress up a pine tree, right? We put pine wreaths on our doors. We dress up pine trees, and we celebrate the coming around once a year of a man with a big white beard who brings presents and is mysterious. Now, folks, this predates Christianity. This is actually a German tradition, and that shouldn't be surprising. U.S. culture is very, very German. Folks, I don't know about you, but before I went to the first grade, I went to something called kindergarten. Kindergarten. Where do you think kindergarten came from? It is a German word. Folks, one of the most popular foods that is associated with the United States is called a hot dog. What was a hot dog called before World War I? It was called a Frankfurter. It was a Frankfurt sausage, right? And when I'm not eating a very popular American food called a hot dog, I'm eating another food called a hamburger. And what is a hamburger? Where is it named after ham? Are there ham in hamburgers? No, they're not. This was a sandwich that originated in Hamburg, Germany. The hamburger. So, hamburgers, frankfurters, coleslaw. America is a very, very German-influenced country. I believe the most common last name among Americans, the most common surname is Miller. Miller is an anglicized version of the last name Muller, a very common German last name, Muller. And this is a very German country, very German country. I mean, among white Americans, the biggest ethnic group is German Americans. And trust me, I grew up in Ohio, in a small town in Ohio, and a lot of the people I grew up around were Mennonites. And, I grew up in a little town in Ohio, Orville, and Orville is famous for being the home of Smucker's jelly. I remember my first grade teacher was named Mrs. Wenger. My second grade teacher was named Mrs. Schumacher. My fourth grade teacher was named Mr. Hurst. My fifth grade teacher was named Miss Hines, right? My sixth grade teacher was named Miss Prizing. Yes, we live in a very, very, very German country. The United States is quite German. And not surprisingly, our Christmas traditions are also quite German. But they predate Christianity, right? Prior to the Roman Empire converting to Christianity, when the Roman Empire was not yet Christian, prior to the conversion of Constantine, prior to Justin the Apostate, who unconverted the Roman Empire to Christianity. After the Roman Empire became fully Christian, the Germans, who were living under the Roman Empire, they converted to Christianity. But prior to that, they were pagans, and they worshipped a god called Odin. Odin. And Christianity, when it adopted the Christmas holiday, was very much adopting the Odinist traditions of Germany. For example, right? Christmas, American Christmas is very, very, very Odinist. So let me tell you about Odin. Odin is the god of valor. He is the king of the gods in the Germanic pagan tradition. And if you've ever read Lord of the Rings, actually in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is admired, and is actually modeled on Odin. Odin is a mysterious man with a big white beard who comes around unannounced, right? He never announces that he's coming. He just kind of shows up, right? Door drama shows the obvious. We can't agree on Medicare for all. We're screwed. I agree. Odin shows up in wintertime to rejuvenate the earth. In wintertime, it's freezing cold, and everything is dying, right? The trees are dying, the flowers are dying, it's freezing cold. And Odin shows up on the winter solstice, Yuletide. He shows up, he comes down from Valhalla or wherever the hell he is. And he shows up with his big long staff and his big long beard to breathe life back into the earth. That's what Odin does. And in order to celebrate Odin's return, the ancient Germans and Norsemen would decorate, props, Jason, we'll talk about that, would decorate their homes with wreaths of pine. Why? Because pine stays green all year round. So pine is proof that the coldness of winter is not permanent, that the coldness of winter can end. Because look, there is one tree, the pine tree, that stays green all year round. So even in the depths of winter, when everything is dying, when all the trees have no leaves, the pine tree is still green. The pine tree, the green of the pine tree, is the proof that life is eternal. What do? We take the pine branches and we put them in a circle. In a circle. Why do we put them in a circle? Because the seasons are rotating and winter will end. Winter is not the end. Winter gives way to spring. And it's to remind us of the cycle of life, the cycle of the seasons. So we put the circular pines on our doors in order to remind us that eventually the winter solstice will come, Odin will return, he will breathe life back into the earth, it'll be warm again, it'll be springtime, and we can celebrate. Furthermore, we take the pine tree and we decorate the pine tree to celebrate this reminder that spring will come again. And Odin comes on Yuletide, the winter solstice, and that is the Yuletide tradition of the ancient Germans and Norsemen. Now, what is interesting about Odin is that I argue that American culture is particularly Odinist. Thoughts on Trump supporters starting to turn on the police. Oh, interesting, Trump supporters. Police. BLM. And so you have Odin, right? Now, Odin, in addition to magically coming around once a year to restore life to the earth, Odin is the god of valor and sacrifice. Odin lives in a magical hall called Valhalla. Valhalla is this hall where Odin lives, and it is always warm. It is never cold in the halls of Valhalla because he has this thing called the eternal fire that never goes out. And he drinks some drink, I don't remember, mead or honey or something, so that he lives forever. And all the people who are in the hall, they drink this magical fluid and they live forever. However, you can only get to Valhalla, according to the Norse religion, if you die in battle. You cannot get to Valhalla if you die of disease. You cannot get to Valhalla if you commit suicide. You cannot get to Valhalla if you die of natural causes. You can only get to Valhalla, the magical hall where Odin lives, if you die in battle. Only those who die in battle can get to Valhalla. And so, the ancient Norsemen, old Norsemen, when they're dying in their beds, they had a ritual that they would conduct where they would take a knife and slice their flesh open as they were dying in the hopes that when Odin saw them, he would see that they were cut up and he would believe that they had died in battle and let them into Valhalla. All right, can you imagine this? Men are dying in their beds, old men. They take knives and they slice themselves up. Now, women can't go to heaven, according to the Norse tradition. Men only. Heaven is for men only. Valhalla, men only men who die in battle. A little bit of a toxic masculine religion, if there ever was one. Not only can women, just forget it, women, no chance whatsoever. Only men, and only men who die in a fight. All right, talk about a toxic masculine religion. You wonder if Jordan Peterson practices this religion secretly. But anyway, that's the ancient religion of the Norsemen. And I wrote an article a while back that got a lot of people really upset, but I'm still glad I wrote it. You can find it on my website. And I talked about Odinism in U.S. history, right? Endless things are written about the Protestant work ethic in the United States. We all talk about Calvinism and the Protestant work ethic, but nobody talks about Odinism, right? American culture is very, very Odinist. I want to tell you something. When I was a kid, before the football game, in the locker room, all the football players would join hands, even though this is completely illegal and unconstitutional. You cannot have prayer in a U.S. public school. But does anyone care? No. They all would join hands, and the coach and the principal would pray with them. And they would pray that God would help them play. And this happens across the United States. The South, Midwest, they don't do it in New York City because of, religious diversity and such. You go to the South, you go to the Midwest, people are playing football, people are playing basketball. We even did it in the drama club, and that's a whole other story I'll share another time. But, they would all join hands, led by the coach, led by the principal. They would pray to God before their sporting event. And why do they pray before their sporting event? Well, the prayer is pretty clear. They're praying that God will help them Help them to go out and play to the best of their ability. Give their most concentrated effort so that they can completely vanquish the other team and be victorious. That's generally what they're praying. God be with us. God help us find our inner strength. Well, folks, that is not exactly a Christian prayer, right? Jesus Christ said, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Jesus Christ said that if your brother is without a coat and you have two coats, you give him a coat. Jesus Christ, there's not many passages in the Bible where Jesus Christ is saying to his followers, go out and vanquish other people and strike them down, and I shall help you find the strength within your soul. Not really big in the Christian Gospels. This tradition of praying before the football game is an Odinist tradition, right? You don't pray to Jesus to help you go out and vanquish the other team in football. You pray to Odin, right? And that in a lot of ways, I mentioned the USA is a very, very Germanic country culturally, and that I argue that there is a huge amount of Odinist influence on American society, and that what people dismiss as the Protestant work ethic is a very, very Odinist thing. And that the reason that many Americans are susceptible to right-wing arguments is because of this Odinist culture. Look, I mean, PragerU, I cannot stand PragerU. They are awful. PragerU are just absolutely awful, pro-free market, capitalist, right-wing pricks. I cannot stand the YouTube channel PragerU. It seethes imperialist lies, free market ideology. I hate them. But why do many people buy into PragerU's arguments? It's because they have been raised in an Odinist atmosphere. A Tanky Left is a counter gang by Sidney Blumenthal to obstruct T.Y. Okay. Tanky Left. Counter gang. All right. Why? Why? Well, these people are raised in this Odinist culture. And in a lot of ways, socialism presents itself in a very non-Odinist way. Socialism in America, right, among young millennials who are into socialism, right? We've all seen the YouTube channels. I've done my impression. I'll do it again. I'll pretend that I am a typical Bernie-crat young liberal channel. I'll sit there, I have a microphone in front of me. These bleeping corporations have too much bleeping power. I want some bleeping healthcare, man. Bleeping, bleep, bleep, bleep. I mean, your typical young millennial socialist. Their attitude is the government is evil, big corporations are evil, fuck this shit, give me free stuff. Well, they're not wrong. Big corporations get free stuff from the government all the time. Big corporations get handouts. We get a lecture about personal responsibility. This Odinism, this work hard or doesn't apply to the rich and powerful. They get a million breaks. We don't. Articles of Confederation. Okay. Right. So they're not wrong. But saying F this shit, give me free stuff, is a very pessimistic worldview. The mindset you get from a typical millennial socialist Bernie-crat is this kind of, my life sucks, the world sucks, I'm mad at the government, give me free stuff. And your life, they're not wrong. The opportunities for young people have been swept away. They have been royally screwed. But instead of responding to being royally screwed with strength and energy and this desire to fight back, there's this kind of blah. There's no truth. Screw this, right? And it's a very dark attitude. And so people who've grown up in an Odinist culture, right? People who have grown up in a culture that emphasizes hard work, where they're praying before the football game and they're putting up pine trees and decorating a Christmas tree. People who've grown up in an Odinist culture, right? People who've grown up in that culture, they look at young socialists and they say, oh, I don't like you. You just want everything handed to you for free by the government. You're lazy and all of that. I don't like you. I don't like your pessimism about the world. I want to wake up and feel good. I want to wake up and feel motivated to go out and work hard for my family. I want to get ahead. And you look like a depressed, non-optimistic person. But this isn't always the vibe that socialism has given off. If you look throughout the history of the socialist movement in the United States, socialism has given off very different vibes throughout U.S. history. One of my favorite writers, if not my favorite writer, she may be my favorite writer, but she's up there. She's up there with William Z. Foster. One of my favorite writers is Anna Louise Strong. And folks know Anna Louise Strong. She was an American socialist. She went around exposing the horrors of child labor. Her father was a minister from Ohio, and she exposed the horrors of child labor, ended up joining the Socialist Party, getting elected to the City Council of Seattle on a platform of helping children. She opposed World War I and was kicked off the school board and led a general strike in Seattle in 1919, eventually moved to the Soviet Union and wrote about the amazing achievements that were taking place there, met Mao, interviewed Mao, just an amazing American, Anna Louise Strong. Well, Anna Louise Strong, right, if you read her writing, it gives off a very different tone. Anna Louise Strong is not saying, fuck this shit, give me free stuff. There's an optimism that flows through Anna Louise Strong's writing. There's actually a biography of Anna Louise Strong called Right in Her Soul, because Anna Louise Strong emphasized that when she was growing up with her father as a Protestant Christian minister, he told her to constantly be wrangling with whether or not she was living a moral life, whether or not she was doing the right thing. And in order to effectively wrangle with that, she should constantly be asking herself, am I right in my soul? Right? And that's why there's a biography of Anna Louise Strong called Right in Her Soul. This is a concept, and it was her drive to be right in her soul that made her stand up and campaign against child labor. It was her drive to be right in her soul that made her, oppose World War I and almost go to prison and get kicked off the Seattle School Board. It was her drive to be right in her soul that had her move to the Soviet Union and move to China and become a communist. Right? So Anna Louise Strong, there's optimism that flows through all of her work. And Anna Louise Strong considers her writing, despite the fact that she's a communist, she's an admirer of Stalin, she's an admirer of Mao, she writes that she considers herself to be a true American. She writes that she identifies with the American spirit. You read it, she argues that communism is the real incarnation of that American optimism, that American drive to go out and create things and build something beautiful. That comes across in Anna Louise Strong's writings. And William Z. Foster makes very similar arguments, and Huey Newton makes very similar arguments about the Black Panther Party. The motivation behind revolutionary activism is not this pessimistic, the world sucks. No, it is this aspiration to go out and fight, to build an entirely new world. And you talk about Stalin's 5-year plans, where the whole population was mobilized to go out and build a whole new country. You talk about what's going on in China right now and how the Belt and Road is bringing railroads and electricity and all kinds of modern development to countries all over the world in Central Asia and Africa. And that socialism has a very hardworking, optimistic edge to it. Socialism says that capitalism is a system where greed and the profits of bankers and billionaires is holding back human progress. But if we can get rid of profits being in command, if the working class can take control of the banks, factories, and industries, if we can plan the economy rationally, human reason, human progress, and human development can soar to even greater heights. Socialism is a fundamentally optimistic ideology that says we can get beyond the horrors of the present world of capitalism by applying science to the economy, by having state central planning, by eliminating the anarchy of production. we can get to a society with a far better living standard. We can eliminate poverty. We can eliminate hunger. We can eliminate scarcity. We can eliminate unemployment. We can build new roads. We can raise the level of productivity. Socialism is about getting rid of the stupidity of having all the major banks, factories, and industries operated by some capitalist who just wants to make a profit. It's about putting human reason and the educated minds of society. It's putting the needs of the people and society overall in charge of the economy. That's what socialism is. And it's a very, very optimistic ideology. Now, what other people are advocating, they think is socialism, this fuck this shit, give me free stuff, is certainly not optimistic. But the vision of Anna Louise Strong, the vision of the Black Panthers, the vision of William Z. Foster and Gus Hall and the people who built the Communist Party, the vision of the people who built the Black Panther Party, the vision of the new communist movement of the 1970s, workers who went out and tried to build a communist organization in the aftermath of the 1960s, the vision of Fidel Castro, the vision of Mao in China, the vision of the Russian Revolution and the Soviet Union, the vision of Bolivarianism, the vision of Ba'athist Arab socialism, the vision of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, the vision of the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist revolutions that have happened before is not a pessimistic, dark, hopeless vision. It's a very optimistic vision. And if socialism in the United States could adjust, if socialism in the United States could change and could become an optimistic ideology that tapped in to the American drive for innovation and creativity, the drive for hard work, the drive to build a better future for your children and for your family, the drive to make a great contribution to the human species, the drive to advance human progress and technology. If socialism could stop being pessimistic, but instead adopt an aspect of this Odinism in American history, this motor-mindedness that seems to define us. If socialism could adopt some of the American entrepreneurial spirit, I am convinced it would be unstoppable. It would be unstoppable. It would shake this country like never shaken before. New people would be brought in. Millions of people would awaken and join the revolutionary movement. I am convinced that if the tone of socialism could change, if socialism could be optimistic, if socialism could be about unleashing people to make great sacrifices, right? If people could understand socialism as a way to make them heroic and powerful, it could be very, 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 very powerful. And ultimately, it would be an unstoppable movement. Debt strikes. Now, folks, I wanted to just take a pause for a moment. And, let me apologize, first of all, if this is not what you want to hear. But I just wanted to do this because PragerU, as I said, really annoys me. PragerU gets on my nerves. And PragerU, it's holiday season, of course. And PragerU is now tweeting out that, the Bible is really great. People should study the Bible. And, of course, PragerU are advocates of all kinds of free market, libertarian, right-wing policies, right? They're against national health care. They're against labor unions. They're against protections for workers on the job. They're all about free markets. And I thought it might be worth reading a few verses from the Bible that seem to go strongly against everything that PragerU stands for. They're saying, the Bible is so amazing, read the Bible. Well, I'm going to read you just a few verses from the Christian Bible that seem to very strongly spit in the face of everything PragerU is about. Now, like I said, I believe in religious diversity, right? There are many people that are atheists. There are many people that are Jewish, that are Muslim. There are many people that are Buddhists. There are many people that are whatever. And I respect, no religious test, but just to spit in the face of PragerU, I'm going to read them some of what the Bible says about socialism and capitalism. And I will read it off to you. And I will give you the actual chapter and verse where you can find this. This is the Christian Bible, what it says about capitalism and socialism. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles, and all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. That's from the book of Acts 2:43 to 2:45. Another one. And now the full number of those who believed were of one heart and one soul. And no one said that any of the things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in Acts verse 4:32. Another one. Come now, you rich, and weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Behold the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by a fraud. They are now crying out against you. That's James 5:1-6. If one member suffers, all suffer together. And if one member is honored, all rejoice together. That's 1 Corinthians 12:26. You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest. That's Deuteronomy 23:19. If your brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself with you, you shall support him as though he were a stranger and a sojourner, and he shall live with you. Take no interest from him or profit, but fear your God. Leviticus 25:35-37. If you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a money lender to him, and you shall not expect interest from him. That's Exodus 22:25. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and it is through the cravings that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. That's 1 Timothy 6:10. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate one or he will love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Matthew 6:24. And finally, this is from the Magnificat, the Song of Mary. According to the Bible, when Mary found out that she was pregnant with Jesus Christ, she burst into song. And the words of Mary's song, known as the Magnificat, are listed in Luke chapter 1. Mary says, among other things, He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and he has sent the rich away empty. And that's Luke 1:52-53. So, PragerU, while they're beating the drum about how the Bible is amazing and how Christian they are, they should actually read what the Christian Bible says about capitalism and the lending of money at interest, and greed, and free markets, what it says about having compassion for those who are in need, what it says about the rich and powerful and how they will be held accountable by the masses of people. PragerU should actually study what the Bible actually says about working people, about social justice, etc. And that leads me to the final point of my opening remarks. Can't stay on here too much longer, but I'll keep going for now. I got a lot of super chats to get through. Folks, before the American Revolution, right? Before 1776, the people of the colonies were angry at the British. They were angry at the British Empire and its system. Many of them had come to flee, had fled from the British system, and they didn't like the fact the British were restricting the American economy, not allowing it to develop. Before the American Revolution, there was a mass religious movement in the United States, and it was called the Great Awakening. It was as the people of the United States were stirring up, and it was decades before they ultimately had the American Revolution. But in the lead up to it, as the consciousness was changing, there was an event called the Great Awakening. And fast forward about 100 years, In the lead up to the American Civil War, as the fight between the slaveholders and the American government was escalating, as millions of Americans were coming to oppose slavery, there was another mass religious movement in the United States. It was called the Second Great Awakening. And what it was all across the United States, Americans were starting to oppose slavery. And they were arguing that slavery was immoral. And so they started to have tent revival meetings. They started to have big religious gatherings to condemn slavery and to protest against slavery. I'm actually descended from Charles G. Finney. My mother's maiden name is Finney. I am descended from the man who started the Great Awakening, Charles G. Finney. He was a minister here in New York City who was so opposed to slavery he would not give communion to anyone who participated in the slave trade, and he eventually moved out to Ohio and moved his whole family out to Ohio. Well, Charles G. Finney and the Second Great Awakening, this mass movement of religious abolitionism, religious social justice activism, this mass movement that John Brown, the great abolitionist hero, came out of, it laid the basis for the Civil War, for the Civil War that eventually abolished slavery in the United States. Mutual aid, left. Mutual aid, abandon, left, term. It laid the basis for the Civil War, the Second Great Awakening. Now, both the First and Second Great Awakenings, at that time, in American politics, religion was how things manifested themselves. We were coming out of feudalism. It was a very religious country at the time. Obviously, we're much more secular these days, right? Now, nowadays, you wouldn't have a religious revival. You wouldn't have the First, Great Awakening. You wouldn't have the Second Great Awakening, right? You wouldn't have a religious revival. But I am convinced, while we're not in a revolutionary period, we're certainly not in times of full-on revolution, I believe that right now we are experiencing the very beginnings of a similar period in American history. Right? There was the American Civil War, right? There was the American Revolution, but before that there was a period of great awakening, when people started to awaken their consciousness, to realize that the system was wrong, to realize that they needed to dedicate themselves to a higher purpose. And it was in that moment when people suddenly became fanatical about the need for a whole new society and the need to get rid of the British Empire or get rid of the slave system. It was in that moment that people suddenly began to awaken across the country. My belief is that right now, the United States is in the very early stages of a great socialist awakening. The people of the United States are beginning to awaken. They are beginning to awaken, and consciousness about the reality of capitalism and what it means, and imperialism and the rotten system of profits over people is starting to happen. And that we are on the brink, on the cusp, on the very beginning of the Third Great Awakening in American history. And it's not a religious awakening. It is a political awakening. It is an ideological and philosophical awakening. We are entering the Third Great Awakening in American history, the moment when the struggle to abolish capitalism will explode and expand, when synthetic leftism will be pushed aside. That's what I believe. I think we're in the very, very early stages of a great American socialist awakening. The Cold War brainwashing and propaganda is being rolled back. All right, State Department socialism. State Department socialism. U.S. support for Pol Pot. That's what I believe. I believe we're at the very beginnings of a great socialist awakening in the United States. And that's something to be very, very optimistic and happy about. Folks, coming out of this pandemic, I want to travel. I want to travel. Right? I'm going to be able to take a lot of time off work. I want to travel. I want to start having socialist rallies, socialist events, socialist meetings with music, with speeches all across the country. I want to start inspiring people to give their lives to socialism and to changing the United States. I want to totally try to reinvent socialism and develop American socialism into something that could actually work here in this country. I want to have events in Kentucky and Iowa and Missouri and California and Wisconsin, everywhere. Coming out of this pandemic, I want to start traveling around the country. And I want to start having very, very powerful, exciting, emotional, educational, socialist meetings where we can win people over to the revolutionary movement. Help people come to understand that if anything is going to get better for themselves, for their communities, for their children, for the future, we're going to have to get rid of capitalism. That's my goal. And I'm going to need you all to help me to do it. Right now, we're frozen. We're stuck in this pandemic. We're doing great stuff with the Center for Political Innovation. We're having web conferences, great web conference planned for next Sunday. But my urge is that all of you stay involved in this, and that we build an IRL, in real life movement, with real IRL, in real life events, where people can be full of passion, where people can be full of energy, and we can awaken the sleeping giant called the American working class. So, on that note, folks, my opening remarks are over. I'm on a little bit of a tight schedule here, but I have always promised that if you give me a super chat, you will get an answer. So let's do names and locations, then I will hammer out these super chats, and then we'll be done. All right, we're ready in California. San Diego, Cat Girl. Hey, says Jason Unruhe. Hey to you. Henderson, Nevada. Kentucky, Belize, Australia. Who else is with us today? All righty. Cincinnati, Ohio, Jenny Lynn. Virginia, CJ. Nassau County, New York. Niagara Falls, Seattle, Utah. Edinburgh, Scotland. Vancouver, Canada. Montville, New Jersey. Nowhere particular. Edward in Los Angeles. Jay from the UK. Northern California, Los Angeles. Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Albany, New York. Aberdeen, Scotland. Auckland, New Zealand. Lockport, New York, Germany, Hungary, South Africa, Little Falls, New Jersey, England, Baltimore, Maryland, Arkansas, England, New Orleans, Max the Sax, Greenland, Greenock, Scotland, Alberta, Canada, Atlanta, New Zealand, Auckland, Maryland. Very, very good, folks. Capital District representing Liverpool, UK, Long Island, Duluth, Netherlands, California, nowhere particular, Finland, Venezuela, Nigeria, Mexico, Dayton, Ohio, Oakland, California, Madison, Wisconsin, CPUSA, represent, Norway, it's either my way or Norway, Juan, Mohsen from Iran, Leipzig, East Germany, a Tatist. Welcome, 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 folks. Vallejo, California, Jason Sarna, Pencil Factory. All right, folks. Buenos Aires, Cuba, Finland, Ithaca, New York, Chicago, Oaktown, Peace. Very good. All righty, folks. And don't feed the trolls, people are being silly. Shanghai, China, Sicilia, and Italy. Very good. All right, now, folks, the first super chat was, why has communism become a blanket smear? Well, I think that's a little outdated. That's probably because of during the Cold War, right? When I was growing up, people used to use the word communism as just kind of a synonym for dictator, right? It said, so-and-so is becoming a communist, or the city council was becoming communist because they were imposing too many laws. And that a lot of people just didn't know what it meant, and it was just a word for bad, dictatorial, authoritarian I think a lot of people just thought communism was the same thing. A lot of people thought Hitler was a communist, stuff like that, right? That's coming out of the Cold War, people not being educated. On top of that, you have, you have the fact that people are widely uneducated about these things. I mean, I heard people who thought communism just meant a poor country, right? That all poor countries are communist. They'd see, starving people in Guatemala, and they say, oh, Guatemala's communist. No, it's capitalist, right? But it can't be capitalist. It's poor. I mean, So, that this is coming out of the Cold War. This is ignorance, right? I mean, this is just, people don't know what words mean. People have just been told communism is bad. They think communism is a synonym with bad. State capitalism. All righty. There you go. All right. Trump martial law reports. I haven't seen anything. I mean, maybe he discussed it with somebody. I wouldn't put it past him discussing it with somebody, but I haven't seen anything actually about them moving towards that. Now, Tom asked, he said, should communism have a new term, as Lenin discarded the term social democracy in favor of communism, right? That's true, right? That the Second International, all the Marxist groups were calling themselves social democrats. When the social democratic parties all sold out and supported World War I, Lenin instructed the Bolsheviks to change their name to the Communist Party, so no one would think they were the party that had sold out and supported the war. That's worth doing. I mean, I've talked about American rebirth. I've talked about socialism with American characteristics, and, I'm open to changing the optics. I'm not open to changing the message, but I'm open to changing the optics in some way or other, right? And that, the Communist Manifesto wasn't the Socialist Manifesto, because there were all kinds of socialists around there. Marx wanted to have a unique name for his scientific socialism. Then, as the Communist International got taken over by crazy anarchists like Proudhon and Bakunin, then, the Second International, they're Social Democrats. Then Lenin changes it back to, the Communist Party in order to be separate from the Social Democrats after they sold out. So, this is semantics, right? And if we can pick a better name, I'm open to that, right? We should not be deceitful. We should be open about who we really are. But, if there's a new brand we want to give ourselves, I think that would be good. I think most people in the United States think that socialists are people who want free health care, and communists are people who, want to blow things up or want an authoritarian state. Well, I do want free health care, but that's not socialism, and I definitely don't believe in left adventurism or terrorism. So maybe we do need to find a new name. In the Arab world, they developed Baathism. In the Middle East, or in Latin America, they had Bolivarianism. And I've argued that we do need a winning formula for the United States. Anarchism, so popular. All right. Okay, $600 is absolutely a disgrace. The amount of relief that big corporations are getting, the fact that most of the relief that was supposed to go to small businesses actually went to big corporations through loopholes, then the fact that average Americans are going to get $600. This is Cuban blockade. This is an outrage. Absolutely an outrage. Absolutely an outrage. All right, antiwar.com. What's interesting, antiwar.com, there was an interesting exchange between me and them. They ran an anti-Venezuela article, and my good friend Garland Nixon called them out for it. And I replied to Garland Nixon and said, well, they're libertarians. They then apologized for the article. They gave a very sincere apology. And then they messaged me, because I had supported Garland Nixon's criticism, and said, we don't push any view. We're not explicitly libertarians. So, hey, that's good. It's good on them that they apologized for running this anti-Venezuela war propaganda article. They apologized for it. That's great. And they have even said they're not explicitly libertarian, which is a good thing. I looked at antiwar.com years ago, and I saw it as kind of a Ron Paul libertarian website, but now that apparently is not the case. And they did take down this anti-Venezuelan article, so good for them. All right. Russia, post-Putin communism. The Communist Party in Russia, it's a very big party, but it has a lot of problems. And I think they're the first to tell you that, right? And that there's a lot of different political thinking in Russia right now. There's obviously Putin represents the leadership and the majority current, and there's many people within the Putin camp. And thank you for loving my work. I do appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much. But at the same time, Thomas Sowell. But at the same time, the Communist Party has some big problems, and some of the other parties have problems as well. So, would Russia move in a more socialistic direction? I don't know, right? It really just depends, right? It really depends on the balance of forces. Like I said, Putin came into office by reasserting state control over the Russian economy by putting, Gazprom and Rosneft at the center of the economy. Putin is not a Marxist. He does not believe in Marxism. But, the Communist Party is very influential. And Russia, all throughout Russian society, people recognize the contributions of the Soviet period. So, people, you get two kinds of thinking in the United States. You get, on the one hand, you get like right-wingers who think, that Russia is still the Soviet Union. It ain't. Right? You get a lot of right-wingers who think, oh, Russia is still the Soviet Union. They're all a bunch of evil red commies. Then that's wrong. That's a lot of neocons think that way, and they're wrong. But then you get this school of thought on the right that think that Russia is still the Russia of the 1990s. They think it's still Yeltsin. It's still neoliberalism. No, a lot has changed. And Putin has done a lot to stabilize Russia and fix the economy and control, the economy, and so it's not the same, right? And that there's a lot of, I think, Russia is something that you need to really, and again, this is people who are using Cold War language to describe everything, where everything is either in the Soviet camp, it's either an explicitly Marxist-Leninist state, or it's, in the American camp. It's not that simple anymore, right? China, Bolivarianism, there's a lot of things in the world that people that are stuck in the Cold War cannot explain. Don't be stuck in the Cold War. Read my book, City Builders and Vandals in Our Age. Newsmax and OAN. OAN is newer, right? Newsmax has been around for a while. They're both conservative media outlets that are smaller, and they're also more pro-Trump than Fox News. Fox News is kind of pro-Trump, but they have Chris Wallace, who doesn't like Trump. They're more neocon. Newsmax and OAN are newer, and they're more explicitly pro-Trump, and they're a little more ideological, right? And I don't know much about them other than that. Yeah, okay, all right. Props to me for standing up to Jason. Look, okay, folks, Jason made an honest mistake, right? He assumed the gender of somebody, tweeted back at them, he got their gender wrong, and he immediately apologized. But immediately they're jumping on him, how dare you, you trans... And this is how these folks are. And I replied, I said, don't feed the trolls. And then they immediately jumped on me, oh, you're saying it's okay to misgender people. No. This individual who Jason was arguing with is someone that no one should ever waste their time responding to. Right? This is a person who is a troll. This is a person with almost no followers. No one cares what this person does, number one. And on top of that, all they do is harass people like me and Jason and claim we're all secretly Nazis. And we're not. And that's really obvious to anyone who's at all honest. So, this person, Jason replied to them, and he didn't use the proper pronoun or whatever. He apologized for doing that. I think people have the right to be called whatever they want to be called, and, you should pay attention to that. But he realized his mistake. He said, look, I made a mistake. And that wasn't enough, and they jumped on him. And I just said, don't feed the trolls. Folks, whatever this person's gender identity is, I would never reply to them because this person is not worth replying to. Okay, the person is simply a troll. Is one of these left baiters, one of these people who is trying to make the case that basically trying to incite violence against me and my family. Right? Their hope by spreading the lie that I'm somehow a Nazi, which I am not. I'm a leftist. I've marched for trans rights. I've marched against police brutality. But by spreading the lie that I'm some kind of Nazi, what they're trying to do, this is what they're trying to do, and they know exactly what they're doing. Their goal is that next time I have a public event, the Antifa kind of forces will show up with weapons and beat the crap out of me and all my friends. Right? And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to set the stage for violence. And they know that they're trying to do that, right? That's what they want. And also, they could set the stage for somebody else, right? Because Antifa, who's Antifa, right? It's just people, they could set the stage for somebody else who wants to do harm to me and my family and my friends, right? They could set the stage for somebody else to do it and say, oh, it was Antifa. Look, he's an asshole, right? This is what they're doing, right? They're trying to incite violence against Jason and myself. They are intellectually dishonest, right? At one point, they were claiming I was a Nazi because there was a post on my website that had the number 88 in the URL. And it just so happened that it came right after the 87th post and right before the 89th post. But somehow the fact that I had a post on my website with the number 88 in the URL, 88 stands for Heil Hitler, that proved I was secretly a Nazi. So therefore, violence against me, and assassinations and murder of me and my family and anyone who associates with me is all okay. What this is really trying to do is trying to set the stage for violence. And that's what these people are trying to do. That's what Skippy the Bear is trying to do. That's what Jabba the Vosh are trying to do. They want to set the stage so that violence can be perpetrated against me, and people will blame Antifa for it. And it may be other forces that would do it, but they would wear the black masks, and then it would just be sent out, oh, look, it was just Antifa, right? And that's what they're trying to do. When you accuse leftists of being fascists, what you are trying to do is that is a threat of violence, right? When the memo has been sent out in left-wing circles that if someone is a fascist, it is okay to murder them, and then you start pointing the finger and spreading lies and taking things out of context to try and make the case that someone's a fascist, that's what you're doing. And that's what they're doing to me, and that's what they're doing to Jason. So when someone is engaging in that, which is conscious, it's conscious, they know what they're doing. No one who watches these broadcasts for half a second would think I was a Nazi, okay? I mean, my God, but when people do that, it's intentional. They know what they're doing, and they are trying to incite violence. So I don't engage with people like that. I don't engage with people. If people want to argue about things that I've actually said and positions, I'll engage with you. But when you start that Nazi red-brown thing, that is nothing but an attempt to incite and justify and set the stage for violence against me. That's all that is. That's all that is. They do it to Jason. They do it to me. They do it to other people. They do it, to Ben Norton, Max Blumenthal. They do it to all these folks. So if someone starts that Nazi thing against me, there's a reason that articles accusing me of this kind of stuff and taking things I've said out of context have been published in Haaretz, right? There's a reason that a certain writer who claims he's an anarchist had an article published in Haaretz saying this stuff, right? Does Haaretz just publish anybody? Come on now, folks, right? This is an operation, and the goal is to set the stage for violence, and that's why if I have public events, I'm going to have all kinds of security there to make sure that nothing happens, So there you go. That's all I can say about that. So props, and I'll stick up for Jason. It's like, come on, right? Give me a break. Trump supporters clashing with the police. Yeah, especially with Kamala Harris coming in, Kamala, as people called her. I think we're going to see an increasing crackdown on dissident views in the name of, danger to public health, conspiracy theories, blah, blah, blah. We're going to see more of that. In that situation, it's going to be very hard for Trump supporters to keep their pro-cop tone going, right? And so we'll see how that develops. That could be interesting. All right. The tanky left being a counter-gang setup. This is so ridiculous, right? A counter-gang. Why would you set up a counter-gang to say exactly the opposite of what the mainstream establishment once said? This is, it's just, it's like let's I don't even want to just whatever, right? And again, right, it's important to be careful with the snitch jacketing and all of that. It doesn't matter at the end of the day if the government is behind somebody or not. What matters is what they're doing helping the working class movement or not? That's the question. Doesn't matter. If you point at someone and say, you're CIA, doesn't help, right? They can just say, you're crazy, right? The point is what they're doing helping the working class movement or not? What Jimmy Dore is doing is tremendously helpful to the working class. What the Young Turks is doing is not. All right. The Articles of Confederation. I don't know enough about early American history. obviously didn't work. They had to set up a federal government to some degree or other. The federal government was created for a reason, so there you go. All right, debt strikes. Hey, people, getting together and talking about how to beat back this debt, and, I'm open to that. I think debt strikes are generally a good idea. I can't comment on a specific situation. All right, mutual aid. Again, I think socialists should be feeding people and caring for people and building a socialist community around doing that and around educating people about socialism. So I'm all for mutual aid. I think it's a good thing to do. Should socialists abandon the term left? No, I don't think so. But again, this is all a semantical game. It's all a semantical game, right? It's about, what you advocate in substance, not necessarily what name you give yourself at any given time. So I'm open to all kinds of semantical things, but at the end of the day, I think the term left is still a good term to use, especially because it denotes historical progress, which is the origin. It comes out of the French National Assembly. The left were the more progressive wing. The right were the more reactionary wing. So there you go. All right, folks. So on that note, I need to wrap this up. This concludes tonight's broadcast, surprise broadcast. Thank you all for joining me. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to post this around. And we'll end the way we always do. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. The people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. And don't forget, folks, that we need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Good night.